These are Tuscan Gnudi. The G is silent. And the name Gnudi is derived from the fact that they're basically naked or nude ravioli. It's the ricotta filling of a ravioli made without any pasta and formed into balls. Very similar in style and technique to gnocchi, except we use semolina flour for this recipe. We use ricotta instead of potatoes, and instead of little kind of pillows, we roll them up into little balls. This recipe has got to be in your pasta rotation. They're impressive, incredibly delicious, and best of all, they're very easy to make. So let's just jump right into it. This recipe starts off with about a pound of ricotta. And what I've done here is I've had this draining in a sieve, in a bowl for a few hours. You could even let it go overnight. Like gnocchi, it's best if the ricotta is as dry as it can be. After a few hours, the moisture starts to seep out of the ricotta, and the ricotta itself will become drier and drier. Now that we've drained this, what we're gonna do is keep it in that sieve. Just gonna blot the bottom from any moisture. Any moisture that's settled at the top can blot. See, it's much drier now. Now what we're gonna do with this is essentially what we've done in the past. See me make whipped ricotta a lot. I either whip it with a whisk kind of vigorously, or I'll throw it in a blender or a food processor. Another way you could do that quickly, in restaurants they have these very fine sieves that they push things like mashed potatoes and all sorts of things through to create a very creamy texture, and so that we can do that same thing with a sieve. If we just push it through, we're gonna work that ricotta through the sieve, and it's just gonna make it a little bit creamier and lighter. Go in with about a half cup of some Parmigiano Reggiano, 1 egg, a touch of nutmeg. I only like a very little. You could omit that if you want. And some salt. Then just give that a quick whip together. Now, for the semolina. We need it in 2 places. The first time we're gonna use it, we're gonna measure it slightly. The second time, we don't need to really measure it. We just need sort of an abundance. Here's the key when it comes to gnocchi or something like gnudi. You want as little flour inside the actual gnudi or gnocchi to prevent any sort of tough end result. You're literally just adding enough of the semolina to this just to slightly bind it to a point where it can kind of hold a shape but is still slightly tacky, that we know is going to be nice and tender at the end. So at first what I'm going to do is take about 4 tablespoons of the semolina. 4 tablespoons is essentially a 1/4 cup, and I think this dough could take about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup to start in the inside and still be able to hold its shape when it cooks. So let's work this in and see where we are. We're using a spoon just so we can slowly add the right amount that we need. And again, that's really gonna depend on how dry or wet your ricotta is. That's perfect. Now we set this aside, and we want a sheet tray. We're gonna take that semolina and just make a bed of the semolina in the sheet tray. Again, we want very little flour inside the gnudi. We can use as much as we need on the outside. That's the secret. Then what I like to do is I take these spoons and I'm just gonna shape little balls. And just place it in there and then repeat. Now you're just using the spoons to create this rough circular shape and to sort of condense the ricotta so there's no gaps in the center. We're going to use our hands to roll them into balls with the semolina later. But the ricotta is a little bit tacky, so using the spoons helps this process along a lot. Then we go back over top and just drench them. Now you want to be generous with the semolina. You can always reserve what's left over and save this for gnudi in the future. Now you just want to take the balls by your hand and then just sort of roll them into a smoother, rounder ball. You've got plenty of semolina on hand, so just make sure your hands always got some semolina in them, and roll those balls until they're just nice and smooth, and then cover them with semolina. And if at any point you see a ball that has sort of crackly edges or is not completely smooth, just keep rolling it, gently compacting it until they're tacky and smooth, and then just coat them in the semolina and then let them rest. You want them kind of buried in that semolina as they rest in the refrigerator. So that makes about 20 little gnudis. Portioning now becomes, what are you gonna do with it? For me, a main serving would be about 7 of these. So if I was serving 4 people, I'd have to double this recipe. Maybe I was serving 5 people as an appetizer to something else, and I could serve each one of them just 4 of them for a smaller portion, then you can get 5 out of it. So it's really sort of up to you. This batch makes 20, doubling it makes 40, and you can do your proportions that way. But these are perfect now. Look, they're little nice balls. They're gonna be perfect. I can tell they're gonna be nice and tender. They're not gonna be tough. They just need to sit in the refrigerator for a minimum of The longer the better. If you can just kind of keep them overnight, they're just gonna really sort of kind of lock in a little bit of a skin. Again, we wanna put these in the refrigerator. Overnight is best, but at least 6 hours. In this video, I tried to rush it after 2 to 3 hours of resting, and that's a big mistake, which I'm gonna show you in a minute. Just got a pot of water. I'm gonna bring it up to a boil. While that comes up to a boil, we can just sort of get everything prepared. First thing is we're gonna take a look. They firmed up. If any of them are slightly misshapen at all, you can just gently go through and make them round again. If they've like absorbed any of that semolina and get a little tacky, just add some more on top. I mean, look how beautiful that is. So we're gonna set that off to the side. So we're gonna make like a lemon brown butter sauce sort of kind of thing. First, I wanna pick off a whole bunch of sage leaves. Just the leaves, no stem. Probably need about 6 to 10 leaves per plate. So we've got our sage. Just throw that into a little kind of thingy right here. Set that off to the side. We're gonna crisp that up and then crumble it up on top. Then we need butter. Now for one portion, about 7 gnudi, I'm gonna use approximately half of this stick. And I'm gonna split that in half. I'm gonna use that for frying the sage. Then I'm gonna use this to finish and emulsify. I'm gonna keep this cold in the refrigerator. And then for one portion, I'll use 1/4 of a lemon. Make sure you get those pits out of there. And then grated Parmesan on top. This comes together really fast, probably around 5 minutes, 6 minutes. But you're gonna have to time it properly. And gnudi cook a little bit longer than most fresh pastas because of their size. So let's just jump right into it. First, I want to show you what not to do. Time got away from me in this shoot, so I tried to cook the gnudi after only 3 hours of rest time, and it's just simply not enough time. As you can see, the result is they instantly start to fall apart in the water. So I scrapped this batch and let the gnudi rest in the refrigerator for another 3 to 4 hours to allow the gnudi to hydrate in that flour a bit more. And what happens is a skin develops around the gnudi that builds structure and protects them as they cook so that they can stay together. That is only achieved with time. About a 6-hour minimum rest is good, overnight is best. And 4 hours later, they're in a much better spot to cook. I get a pot of water, salted and up to a boil, and then we want to drop that down to a gentle simmer. No rolling boils for cooking gnudi. Next to that pot, I want to get a small pan preheating. Then we're going to gently drop the gnudi into the water a couple at a time and let those cook until they float. And while they cook, we can add the butter to the hot pan and work on the sauce. Add the sage to the melted butter and cook on medium to medium-high heat, moving around constantly so that they cook evenly until the sage begins to turn a deep forest green. Once you see this color transformation take over the leaves, quickly get them out of the pan to dry on a paper towel, and then they're gonna finish cooking as they dry. And then let that brown butter continue to brown. You can go light or dark on a brown butter. I like to go a little bit darker for a little bit more flavor. And once I see the color I like, I kill the heat and allow that pan and the butter to cool slightly before adding any liquid to it. I also wanna make sure that we gently nudge the gnudi around to make sure that they don't stick to the bottom of the pot. And by now, the gnudi should be floating, and once they float, we want to cook them for another 1 or 2 minutes to allow them to cook through all the way. By now, the butter should be cooled down a bit. We want to squeeze in that lemon, but be careful, there will be a reaction with the hot butter. But that's going to stop the browning of the butter, and we can also add some pasta water, which is going to do the same. And then we just want to reduce the sauce down slightly. The gnudi should be about 30 seconds away from being done, so kill the heat on the sauce and then slowly start to melt in that cold butter, 1 or 2 cubes at a time until the sauce emulsifies and thickens. And then gently strain out the gnudi and add them to the sauce, but don't agitate them like we normally do with pasta. Just gently baste them in the sauce for a minute and then you're ready to plate. Now to plate, all we want to do is spoon the 7 gnudi into sort of this circular pattern. And then we're going to spoon over that brown butter sauce atop each gnudi. And once we have a nice layer of sauce covering each gnudi, we're going to generously grate some Parmigiano Reggiano on top. Then we can take that crispy sage and crumble it up into little crispy sage bits. And then we're going to add a little dollop of that on top of each gnudi. And then we're ready to serve. It's so delicious. Gnudi. The inside is nice, it's airy, it's light, it's tender, it's not dense or tough. It really is a beautiful thing. Recipe down in the description. This must be in your pasta rotation. Give it a try. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself. For more delicious recipes, got a few more on the screen right now, like this beef stroganoff that you've really got to try. And thank you for watching.